Welcome to Urban Fantasy PH. We are creatives who live in an urban society and give readers wish fulfillment by way of our stories, which is fantasy but reflective of reality. Here, we get to talk to fellow creatives like writers, authors, artists, comic book creators, filmmakers, you name it. We create and share our art here in the Philippines as well as abroad. My name is CJ Edmunds, I'm your host, and here is today's episode. Hey, good morning, happy Wednesday, and welcome again to another edition of Urban Fantasy PH. Today is episode 23 of the podcast, the second episode of our current fourth season, and our show is aired every Wednesday, both for Spotify as well as for my YouTube channel. Now you have the option to watch us or listen to us. We give you that choice, whether you're listening or watching. Just please click the subscribe button and ring the bell so you do not miss a single episode, and you will duly be notified when a new one comes along. Now, today on the show, we have an independent writer, teacher, and former assistant professor for the Department of English and Comparative Literature for the College of Arts and Letters in UP, not to mention the deputy director of the UP Institute of Creative Writing. Now, UP is also where he earned his undergraduate and graduate degrees in creative writing. As a professor then, he taught classes in composition, literature, popular culture, science fiction, and creative writing. Boy, does he have his hands full. His fiction and his poetry have been published in the Philippines Free Press, Ampersand, and the Journal of English and Comparative Literature, just to name a few. Now, in addition, his fiction has also been anthologized in the Philippine Pen Center Anniversary Anthology, which is called A Different Voice, fiction by young Filipino writers back in 2007. Now, the book that we are featuring today is called Field of Play and Other Fictions, and it is his first book. There you go. I have it right here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So currently he has migrated to the U.S. Is he still teaching? I don't know. We can ask him later. I do hope that he is still writing. So we need to ask him then. Let's bring in Francis Paolo Quina. Hello, Francis.
Hi. Hello, CJ. Hello, listeners. So,
All right.
hi. Of course, I'm here in the United States, but I need to clarify some things.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I didn't migrate to the United States. I'm here to do my PhD. And I am still an assistant professor at the University of the Philippines.
Oh, you still are? Nice.
Yeah, I'm just on leave. So they're letting me spend 5 years in the US to do my PhD.
Ooh. Wow. Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
So I will be back.
Okay, you will be back to terrorize some more students.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I'm a terror professor, but I will be back.
All right. Just like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Without the Austrian accent, of course.
I mean, I can do it, but it will be a bad accent.
But I chanced upon your book when I was looking for local writers, and I'm so glad that I found it. And there's so much to say about one's first book, but if we sort of like wound the clock a little far back, did you always dream of becoming a writer?
Okay. This is a question that I think every writer is asked. So the short answer is no. When I was growing up, I wanted to be in the sciences, and in fact, my first degree in college is applied physics. I got a scholarship to attend UP under the applied physics program. But at some point, I realized that, that my love of physics is like conceptual, but when it came to the math behind it, it was just too much for me. So I took that conceptual love, and the love of like imagining things, and sort of poured it into literature. And eventually I discovered that, I had a kind of a bit of talent for writing, and I kind of pursued that afterwards. So I didn't start out as a kid dreaming of becoming a writer. I had stumbled upon it happily.
They say that the journeys that you stumble on, or the roads that you stumble on, are usually the ones that you stay the longest, if not for life, as opposed to the ones that you try and purposely look for or map out for yourself.
Yeah.
Thinking that, this is this is my degree in college. Obviously, I'm going to be this.
Yeah.
But no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But what they say about writers, apart from being asked that obvious question, is that we begin as readers. So,
Hmm.
I was wondering, what were the kind of books that you had in your home growing up, and were any of your parents or siblings avid readers?
Okay. My dad, my father, who worked. So I grew up in Olongapo City,
Hmm.
Sambales. So for the listeners and viewers who are not aware of it, in the 70s up to the 90s, there was a U.S. naval facility there. So my father worked for the U.S. Navy in Subic, and we lived in Olongapo. So my father had a lot of books,
Mm.
books mainly coming from U.S. soldiers who just would buy books, read them, and just throw them out. So my father would take the books, read them. He was a voracious reader. He could read like a paperback novel in like two sittings.
Hmm.
So we had a lot of books, a lot of magazines growing up, uh,
Nice.
and I just like growing up. I remember having this, and this is so crazy because this is a book that I never finished reading. But there's this biography biography of General Douglas MacArthur called American Caesar. It's just
Mm.
like probably like 700 pages, and it's in paperback,
Wow.
and I would rifle through it, but I never really read it. So we did have a lot of wealth of like reading materials at home, and it was my father who was the avid reader when I was growing up.
Ah, I keep asking my guests about the books that they read growing up, but to sort of like switch things a bit as well, was there a book that you stayed away from or tried reading but knew that it was not for you?
Oh, that's good. So a big caveat, I probably like again like your stereotypical writer's story. Even though my father was an avid reader and I tried to emulate him, I wasn't really much of a reader until I think high school.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and the very first novel that I read from front to back is The Lost World by Michael Crichton, which
Oh,
is the
yeah.
sequel
The
to
sequel to
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
yes.
So now thinking right now, was there a book that I purposefully did not read? It, like being a student of literature, we were once asked to read this. See, I don't even remember the title of the book, but it was an assignment. I didn't read it just because my friends and my classmates said, "Oh, it's a very depressing book." It was for a third world literature studies
Oh,
class,
okay.
and I just like there was no Wikipedia then, or yeah, so I just looked it up, and then I just winged my way through the class. So I can't even tell you the name of the book, but I haven't really like encountered a book that I purposefully avoided reading. There are a lot of books that I want to read or had wanted to read, but I just
I know.
don't have the time.
So many
Yeah,
books, but so little time.
exactly. Yeah,
That's so true. Well,
yeah.
there's always that talk about pushing forward and just moving along. Let's say perhaps maybe on a creative flow, or even in the simplest act of reading. Everyone usually says, "Oh no, go for it, push
Mhm.
till you get there," or read it because you might like it. But no one talks about picking up a book, for example, and knowing that it's not for you,
Yeah,
and then moving on to the next read. I mean, isn't
yeah.
I suppose that there is some uh, wisdom to be had by giving up on something because it was not for you, or you simply did not connect to it, whether it be reading or probably in the process of creating something.
Right. Well, yeah. So for example, if you're talking about reading something, I kind of give myself like a third of the book,
Hmm.
and then I just if I fall off, then that means I'm just not interested in it. So for example, now that you mentioned it and you framed this conversation in that way, for example, I've never read a Haruki Murakami novel throughout.
Okay.
I'm always almost always like halfway through, and then I just lose interest. Not because he's not a good writer, but like there's just some energy that I'm looking for an energy in a book, and it's not there. And if I get distracted by like a TV show
Oh yeah,
or a movie,
we all
then
are.
yeah, then it's gone. So there are like books where I'm halfway through it, I put it down, and then I never pick it up. And sometimes there's guilt,
Mm-hmm. Oh
but
yeah.
at the same time, you recognize that, you know what, I haven't really seen all the episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I'm fine. It's been 30 years, so I will live. So
Me
I'm
too.
not
Me too. I
finishing.
haven't
Yeah,
finished either.
yeah. So like I guess there's that. Now in terms of creating something, if you're just like writing a story and you're finding yourself uh, just working on the same draft again and again. Uh, I think there is wisdom in stepping away from it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there's also wisdom in trying to come back and see something with fresh eyes, like stepping away from it for like a few days or sometimes even like a year,
Right.
and then
Right.
coming back and saying, okay, I know that the story that I've been writing isn't really this story, but it's something else.
Right.
Yeah.
The bottom line is you have to give yourself, permission to do that, to
Yeah.
permission to say no, permission to, like, this is not for me for now, or I'm not in the mood to read a rom-com, I'd rather read something from Stephen King or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Right, that's not the mood. It's like it's Halloween, so or something. I'm supposed to read something scary and not something too, uh too girly or whatever, I don't
Yeah.
know, or but did you have projects that you also felt that you could not move forward because you felt it wasn't the right time? And I was wondering, what lesson did you get from it when you stepped back because you didn't go through it? I mean, regardless if you felt the project was, I don't know, worthy of a trash bin, because there will always be something to be learned from stepping back.
Okay. So since we're talking about or this conversation is framed around my first book, and talking about projects. Um, this book actually started as an undergrad. This is my undergraduate thesis
Hmm.
in creative writing. As you had mentioned earlier, I had taken my undergraduate creative writing degree, and this collection is actually my undergraduate thesis, or most of the stories are actually part of my undergraduate thesis. Now, I didn't start out writing a short story collection. I started writing a novel, and the
Okay.
idea was that the novel would be composed of stories that interlocked with each other. So the idea was all of the characters knew each other,
Mm-hmm.
and then one story would affect the other story because the what happened in the other story, and then at the end it would be like an Ouroboros that would be a snake eating its own tail,
Yeah.
right? And I had started writing towards that in my third year in the program. So the program is 4 years. So halfway through, I had half of the stories written, I believe, and then I found myself like uninspired because once I put it into paper and I had like a graph that like mapped out the relationships of the characters, what's supposed to happen in this story is supposed to happen in that story. I couldn't do it. I couldn't pull the trigger on it.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a difficult time, just because maybe I felt like it was, and this is just me. I felt like there was no joy in discovering what would happen to the characters in the story because I had overdetermined that this had to happen to this character because at this point when you introduce them into the other story they should already be this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what I did was that I stepped away from it and basically gave up on that project. And what happened was that at the same time, I was reading a lot of metafiction or experimental fiction, if we want to call it like that, or some people call it like anti-fiction. And I sort of like fell into the rabbit hole of like, telling stories about how to tell stories. And so like,
Right, right.
yeah. So the
Which gives you the impression like you're breaking the fourth wall as a writer,
Yeah,
because
basically, because
that's what I felt like when I was reading
yeah,
it.
like this was like I think around this time the movie adaptation by Spike Jones came out, and it was like a movie about adapting a book to become a movie. And there was like Synecdoche, New York, which was a movie about a man who's writing a play, but the play is about his life, and they recreate the entire world inside the theater. So
Mm-hmm,
like those levels of like reality and like the
oh,
writer and the reader are the same. So
right. That kind of overlap, so to speak. Yeah.
yeah, so I did give up on the one project, but I found a way to salvage most of the stories that I had written into another project, and which ended up like here in this collection.
All right. Speaking of trash, you were also part of an anthology called Trash,
Yeah.
which is the Southeast Asian Urban Anthology.
Yes.
Can you tell us how you got to be involved in that, and what is the anthology all about?
Okay.
If the title is not obvious enough.
If I'm not mistaken, and this is like from a few years ago, so I have to refresh my memory. But this is published. This is like an anthology. It's a three-volume anthology published by
Okay.
a Malaysian publisher called Buko Fiksi, and they had partnered with like Southeast Asian writers. One of them
Mm-hmm.
is being Dean Francis Alfar. So there's three story, or sorry, three volumes, and each volume has its own theme. So one theme is trash, one theme is, I think, heat, and then I
Mm-hmm.
forget the third volume. But uh, you just wrote towards that theme. So I it was it just so happened that I have a story where there was trash. So and and there was a call for submissions.
Okay.
I was like, it was a lucky coincidence. So it wasn't something that I had written. The story that I had submitted for it was a story that had existed before, and so it was just a happy coincidence. But it is a Malaysian publication, and
Okay.
there was a call for submission.
I think I remember seeing a cover of a book called Trash. It's color green, is it?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So that's the one. So I remember one time seeing that book. So I figured, okay, that's the topic. I'm not sure,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah. All right. Well, it's interesting whenever a writer does get selected for to join an anthology. You sort of feel validated because you are among fellow creatives, and probably it's only when joined by others do some writers feel that sense of validation.
yeah,
So,
sure.
where do you think should a writer start with the validation, upon release of your own work, or from the day that you begin to craft the work itself?
Oh, okay. Well, my answer there is like, this is a very multifaceted question. So the answer is multifaceted. Like, if you really want to write, I believe that you should write. And
Mm-hmm.
if your goal is to be read, there are so many places where you can get read, right? It doesn't have to be print publication. You have online publication.
True.
Um, and if you just want to write, you can just write, and no one has to know what you're writing. I've heard of people who just write things for their own enjoyment. It's not for public consumption. Like people who journal write for
Yeah.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they imagine that there's like an audience later when they're
Mm-hmm.
dead. So it's really what you want out of it. Like with most exercise and most creative exercise, if you just want to write, if you just want to paint, if you just want to sing or you compose, just doing it. should be validation enough.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking for validation, as in, like, oh, I got published by this prestigious anthology, or I got recognized or got blurbed by this famous author, then that kind of validation is also valid. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it's also dangerous
Mm.
because you might not get the validation, and
Okay.
or if you get it, you might also not be aware of that. There might be strings attached to it, or like there's politics around it that you're not aware of. So I would say, if you want to be a writer, and the number one reason is you want to write, you want to get read, there are so many online platforms where you can do that. You can even go to self-publishing, which is a thing that a lot of
Yes.
Filipinos do,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is great because for the longest time, being published in the Philippines was very difficult. And now you have self-publishing, you have zines, a lot of new writers, poets, comic book artists started by doing zines. Um, so if you really want to get read, that's an avenue.
Yeah.
Uh,
It shouldn't stop you from, the form of the output should not stop you
yeah, of
from
course.
creating. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And like later on, I mean, honestly, for example, in my case, my goal in life, and this is the reason why this book is like, it was only published in 2018, because it has been finished in some form since 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to publish it because one of my goals in life was to publish a book. And I said, if I publish this book, then what am I gonna do? What is
What's
my
next?
life? What is next? But I had to publish it because my wife said you have to publish your book because it's been sitting in your hard drive for like almost 10 years. It's time to let it go. So that's what happened. And now, having published this book, you mean like, do I feel validated by it? Is it like the reason, like, this is the dream that I had when I started writing? Yeah, it's a book. Here, I'm so happy it's out. But at the same time, there's so much more to life to do. So yeah, I feel validated that the book is out. I feel validated that it was like shortlisted for the National Book Award,
Mm-hmm.
and like it was a finalist for like the Madrigal Gonzalez Best First Book Award. Great validation. But at the same time, I have to also think of looking for other forms of validation, not just like getting published and being recognized in that way.
Right. Okay. Well, I've also, as I mentioned in the beginning, that you earned your graduate degree for creative writing in
Yeah,
UP, and you also taught classes there,
yeah.
apart from being deputy director.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about that experience? How was it like, and what did you take away from that experience prior to leaving to pursue further studies in the U.S.?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when I did my graduate degree, I was already teaching. So as I was
Okay.
teaching undergraduate degrees, I was taking graduate classes. Right.
Wow.
So yeah. Uh,
Two hats in one day.
So that's in one day. After you say goodbye, students, and then I'm now the student
Yeah.
in a graduate class. So teaching, writing, and teaching is, I think it's a complementary job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that's why I became a teacher, because I wanted to write. And I had the mistaken notion that if you look at teachers, they go to class, teach one class, and then they disappear. You don't see them anymore, and you think,
Yeah,
"Oh my
yeah,
goodness, my teacher has so much free time." So
yeah.
when I was young, I said, "You know what? I'm gonna be a teacher because I'm gonna teach a class, hi students, and then say bye, and then I can write to my heart's content." But obviously, that's not the case. Because when you're a teacher, you have to prepare for class, and then
And for the next class as
for the
well.
next class, because in UP you teach four classes. Um, and then on top of that, you're a student. On top of that, like for my, as you had mentioned, I was the deputy director of the UP Institute of Creative Writing,
Hmm.
which is an administrative position. I also, that was like a second job for me. So I had two jobs. I was a teacher, I was an administrator, I was a student, and then I was writing. So I was doing four things. So it was
Okay, four hats then in a day,
yeah,
not just two.
yeah, it was kind of overwhelming. And honestly, um, I have a lot of colleagues at the English department who are at the UP English department who are great writers who are able to balance writing and then teaching. Uh, but for me, it's been difficult, trying to balance it. Like, not
Mhm.
that I stopped writing. I have a second collection of short stories that once
Nice.
again is sleeping in a hard drive, and I'm waiting for my wife to just like tell me to like get it published already. Uh,
Do we have a title for that already, or is it too early to even think of a
I'm
title?
not even sure what the
Nah.
title is. It's just like it's like nine stories that have been published elsewhere. So
Okay.
it's like it's already been published. So I just have to put it together and then like write a proposal or something. But I don't know. I'm just sitting on it. But yeah, but it's slow. Like I know, and I think this is not just for teaching, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it's for anyone who is writing and then has a job, a regular 9 to 5 job. It will always be like a balancing act
Mm-hmm.
between I have time to write and I have time to work, and then there's life in between.
Right.
And for some people, who are lucky, they don't have to work because either they married into a wealthy family or they are in a wealthy family. They can write. But honestly, even here in America, people who have published multiple books still have to do work, still have to do regular work
Yep, that's
because
the hustle.
it doesn't the book writing books, writing stories, it doesn't really pay unless you're like at the level of James Patterson, Stephen
Exactly.
King,
Stephen King.
yeah, those
Those
people,
people have, who have really carved the name for themselves.
yeah,
And even if for those authors who are, who are not around, they have their estate,
yeah,
and that will still
exactly,
keep, churning revenue for
yeah,
them. One of the quotes in your book that you used came from the great Plato. The Republic goes like, "The beginning is the most important part of the
of the
work."
work,
Yeah, and there are as much as different creatives in the world. There's also different approaches to creating for different people. Some people can start a story but not finish it. Some people can end it, but they're bad at starting it. So where do you think you fall under?
that's, you know what, one of my favorite writers is John Irving.
Hmm.
He's an American novelist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work.
Yes, John Irving.
There was a period of time where I would reread his books once every year. So like
Hmm.
his books are not like thin books; they're like 600-page books. So I would like every year I would reread either the Cider House Rules or A Prayer for Owen Meany, just because I just love the muscular writing that, you know very 19th century novel kind of writing, but
Hmm.
very contemporary. And he famously says that he never begins writing a book until he knows the last sentence of the
Ah,
novel,
okay.
and then because he knows now where it ends. Now for me, I always start with an idea. So I'm a like if you're like I'm a great ideas person. Like, give me a prompt and then I can come up with something. Now
All right.
ask me,
Yes, I will. I'll lalabanan ko ang chat GPT.
yeah, but ask me to write it. Oh my god, that's gonna be it's a slog. But once I get into a flow, I'm able to finish it, and
Mm-hmm.
this is where like going to school for creative writing was really helpful for me because it had structure. It
Mm-hmm.
forced me to sit down and say, okay, by the end of this, like in this 3 week period, you need to have a story, like a 4,000 word story. I will be able to knock out 4,000 word story at the end of it just because I have to do it. But
Okay.
given without that structure, it's difficult for me. So I think I would say I'm great at the beginning where I am like generating ideas, but finishing means you have to be consistently working at it, and that's where my
Mm-hmm.
weakness is. I have to either be sat down, like given a deadline, like
Mm-hmm.
someone pointing, I don't know, a laser at me to be able to write.
Um, you mentioned that doing your undergrad, it helped you provide structure to, I guess, to the system of the work.
Mm.
Does this include, or does this narrow down to your system that, oh, because I know now to put structure in my system, I'm automatically a plotter? Or would you still be a pantser at heart as well? Or walking the fine line of being a planter, someone who's both that, both a pantser and a plotter?
Wow, a very NaNoWriMo question.
Oh, yeah.
I would,
November is knocking.
I know. Every year, I sign up, and then I have like a plan, and then I would write 1,000 words, and that's it. Anyway, so I would say that, as I mentioned earlier, now I like the idea of planning it out, but
Hmm.
when once I planned it out, I cannot write it because it like sometimes the feeling of like the story trying to or me trying to fit the story in a or fit a mold.
Hmm.
When you're in the process of writing it, you discover things. So what I would say that I'm in the weird middle where I have a plan, but if the story is pushing me in a direction,
Hmm.
then I will follow that direction. And then sometimes
Okay.
I'm just stubborn and I will just follow. Like I have a novella that I'm still working on after like probably like 7 years because
Hmm.
I just want it to be about this particular thing. And everyone who's read it and like it was read at the UP National Writers Workshop, people who commented on it said, you know what, you should do this. I asked people here in graduate school who are also writers to look at it, and they said, the story is actually going in this direction, but I can't edit it because I wanna because there's this plan that I have.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, so I'm there in the middle. If there's a plan, I will stick to the plan until up to a point where I can no longer follow the plan, and either I will give up or I will change the story to fit
Okay.
it.
All right. Reading the preface of the story, or the first story, it felt like the whole purpose of the book itself was like, a master class that was slowly unfolding, and you, as the student slash reader, feel that much information is being passed on to you. But by the time you get to a third story in the book, which is the title story that anchors the entire anthology,
Mm.
I just had to start highlighting some phrases and sentences that spoke to me. And for me, highlighting in a book is a no-no because I don't ever want to deface a book. But I hope you don't mind me highlighting
Sure.
your book. There you
Yeah.
go. You can see that.
Oh, okay.
It's still here with me. But
Yeah.
let me mention some of them, and maybe you can tell our listeners what you
Sure.
meant by that.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. One thing that I highlighted was the problem of authenticity can simply be solved by research. You need to convince her, the reader, and writing is like a seduction. Right?
Wow. I wrote that. I mean,
Yes.
well,
Graphic on page
I
number.
well, I think that So we're talking about the third story, which is called Feel the Play, or How to Write
Page
a
26. There you
Yeah,
go.
page 26, How to Write a Coming of Age Story, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes,
right?
coming of age story.
Yeah. So I think I was like thinking here about how characters are can feel fake, right?
Mm.
And when you're writing a character, uh, people will say that that person is not from this background,
Mm-hmm.
or that person is not that like Catholic schoolgirl won't speak like that or won't talk like that. But if you do your research, you can convince your reader that you know what you're talking about, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking about, and the interesting thing about this story, which kind of like, which as I said, anchors the collection, is this was a story that initially was not written this way.
Okay.
So the original story was like a regular story, and then I one of the professor in the writing class said had given us this really interesting story by Mary Gordon called "How to Tell a Fairy Tale." If I'm not, I'm just like maybe forgetting what the actual title is, but this story by Mary Gordon. So it talks about how you tell a fairy tale, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was looking at my story and I said, you know what? Maybe I should transform it to how to tell this
A
story.
coming of age
So
story, right?
yeah, coming of age story. So I have broken apart a story that already existed and then like played around with it.
All right. Okay. This one is for all the writers out there giving their characters a little bit of backstory. Um, the easiest way to create a fictional family is to model it after your own. Yes, I myself am doing this,
Yeah,
but I try not to do too much of it too close to home
yeah,
because it's fiction after all.
yeah. And it's what's so great about it is I don't think my family has read the book with the exception of my wife. I don't think my parents and my brother have read the book fully,
Hmm.
uh, front to back. So even if they're here in the stories, and even my friends are here in these stories, they don't know.
Yeah.
So who's and if they say it's me, right? They you can just say no, it's not you.
Well, you named yourself as well in the last story, so you're also
Yeah,
there.
I know, I know. Yeah, I know. Actually, the last story is interesting because the person who the story is about or had what I had based a character on uh eventually messaged me like probably like a year after the book came out and said, you know, it's this is me, right? I'm the girl in the story, and I was like, oh, I didn't know you would read the book since we haven't spoken in a few years, and I was just surprised that it was awkward, but I mean, thank you for reading the story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That. There's validation for you.
Yeah, I mean, my innate feeling is when you write a story or when you write fiction, you just draw on what's around you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, for example, right now I'm trying to write a story, and now the story is set in Pittsburgh. Just because I'm in Pittsburgh, it's still about a Filipino, but the Filipinos in Pittsburgh since I'm here.
Okay.
Uh, you use the material that you have. That's the easy explanation for that.
Okay. Another one. Loss is a way to gain knowledge and experience.
Ah, right. Well, that's just like a recapitulation of how experience makes us better people. Like if you
Yeah.
lose something, it's an experience.
It
And
toughens
then
us up.
yeah, it opens you up. Yeah.
Yeah. You may also, there's also one that says, you may track the structures and objects from up and down the street. In this paragraph, you're asking us to allow the girl, or in this case, the reader, to
Mm.
have the experience of reading the scene as if it were done cinematically, like a
Yeah.
camera shot that would pan up and down the street from left to right.
Mm.
So I was wondering, how important are these pan shots in a book when it comes to world building?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I read somewhere that the first author who uh, and this was like a literary critic who was describing the work of this author.
Hmm.
Uh, this literary critic, whose name escapes me, says that Stephen King is the first author of the television generation. Because
Okay.
I don't know what I know. He meant that if you read a Stephen King book, it's like you're watching a television show, which is
Yeah.
probably great because you have Stranger Things, which is like based on the works of Stephen King, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And a lot of his works have been adapted to, as prior to movies,
yeah,
TV series.
yeah,
Him and Sidney Sheldon.
yeah. That's true, Sidney Sheldon. But I think like cinematic language is inescapable because I think that's a medium that we're all familiar with.
Hmm.
And so when we describe things, we kind of like describe it in the vista of like the sweeping Lord of the Rings, look at Middle Earth thing, but not the look at Middle Earth thing sweep of J.R.R. Tolkien, but in the sweep of Peter Jackson, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's it's not that it's important, it's that it's part of our language and the way we now experience things. So
Right.
the way we experience things is going to be different. Like I'm sure if you look 20 years from now at young people who become writers, the way they're writing will be more similar to the kind of media that they consume. So that will be shorter.
Hmm.
Like it's like you will see the TikTok writers, the
Oh God,
influence of
yes. Yeah,
TikTok.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
Book
don't know
talk.
what that will yeah. I don't know what that will look like in the way it's described on the page.
Hmm.
Uh, but for me, the way I thought about it was, when you ask or when someone reads right now, they think of the book cinematically,
Yeah.
right? Like if you read, if like especially if the book was adapted into a movie or a
Hmm.
television show, when you read it, it's almost impossible to imagine the characters in the book the way the author describes it. It's now what you saw in the movie. So,
I agree. I
so
I agree.
yeah. So if you, for example, watch the Da Vinci Code and then you saw it first and then you read it, now in your mind it's always going to be Tom Hanks
Yeah,
as
Tom Hanks and Ian
yeah.
McKellen. Yeah, it's
So
gonna
if
be
you
that.
like, for example, I first saw the movie Jack Reacher, and then
Hmm.
that's when I started reading the Lee Child books. And
Yeah.
in the book, I was like, this description of Jack Reacher is like he's like a 6 foot guy, but in my mind, it's Tom Cruise
It's Tom Cruise.
because for
Right.
a while he was the only Jack Reacher, but
Yeah.
now you
There's another
have
there's another Jack Reacher, right?
yeah, right,
But
yeah.
the is he African American in the book? I haven't really read
No,
Lee
no, no,
Child, so
no.
he's not, right?
No, he's
He's
not
Caucasian.
he's
Okay.
Caucasian. So
Yeah,
he's
but
closer to the book description than Tom Cruise, definitely.
okay. All right. But some people also would once they know that the movie is coming out, it's like, oh, I'd rather watch the movie and not read the book because it'll only take about 2 hours and 30 minutes, or if not
Yeah,
an hour and a half of my time as
yeah,
compared to reading a book. But
yeah.
for those who have that choice, please read the book first
Oh
and
yeah,
then watch the movie. Or if you're not, or if you can, or fine, watch the movie. But it's always nice to go back
yeah. I
to the
mean,
source material.
yeah. I think, and this is like a conversation I've had with like friends who are also like writers, but at the same time geeks. Like, if you adapt a book into a television show, or I'm sorry, if you adapt a book into a movie, then
Hmm.
it's you're just gonna take the plot and
Yeah,
no character developments or very little character development.
very, very
Very
little.
little. That's why book adaptations are best when it's on TV because you have like multi-episode arcs where you can just
Yes.
explore things. Short stories are great for movies because it's one and done, right? You have a beginning, you have an end, and that's it.
Yeah,
You
that's
can
it.
add things into it, but then So short novels or short stories are great for movies, but TV is the novel. So if you're, I mean, and I guess in today's media landscape, with all of these like prestige TV shows, that's like reading,
Hmm.
that's like reading a novel, watching a
Yeah.
season of TV.
True, true. There's also a passage there that says there were no longer original stories to be written. Writers are here to retell old stories again and again. Steven Spielberg said this at one time, and I
Hmm.
think Stephen King as well.
Hmm.
Is this something that you also believe in, and that's why you wrote that in the book?
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, that I think is a riff on something that Neil Gaiman had said.
Okay.
So Neil Gaiman also said that, and the fact that Neil Gaiman said that and Steven Spielberg said that, it's just like recapitulation or repeat of an idea that is, just pervasive in the culture, and it's just that all of these stories have been told before and we're just retelling the stories. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that a retelling is bad. Sometimes a retelling is good,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you find a new way of telling it, like we are, for example, it's been 30 years, or no, more than 30 years since the first Star Trek show, like more like 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have some of the best Star Trek content right now, right? And they've just been telling the same stories over and over. I mean, on the very basic plot level, all these stories, all Star Trek episodes are almost identical, to the
Yeah.
point that you have, oh, this is the thing. There's this episode where they go to a world where there's a weird culture, and then some of them are in peril, and then they have to investigate something or solve something, and then they get to leave. They're fine,
Yeah.
and that's like hundreds of hours of television. It's the same framework over and over again,
Right, right. It's the same.
right?
It's the same. It's the same arc or the same
Yeah,
rabbit hole that they fall into. It's
yeah,
just that the rabbit hole will vary from each episode. One probably will be colored pink. The other one will be
yeah,
colored purple.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
it's that's it.
Yeah,
Um,
so yeah, if you think in terms of books, if you look at like say military science fiction novels, like they're basically the same thing. Either there's a new recruit who is pulled into this military organization. Is it based on Earth? Is it alien? Doesn't really matter because structurally it follows the same cadence, and then
mhm,
they fight and then they succeed, right?
mhm.
So the trappings, the details, they're the things that make it different. So, for example, Starship Troopers and say Halo, right? They're like basically the same thing,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the
yeah.
trappings are
Right, right.
different, right?
Exactly. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. Apart from the book that I said being a masterclass at work, there's also one story that really piqued my curiosity. That was
Oh.
the 7 pages from a Filipino novel.
Oh, right.
In it, you talked about two Filipinos that I've only heard about from
Oh,
reading this. Yeah,
okay.
these people would be Jose Liedo, and the
Ah.
other one is Manuel Andrada.
Oh.
And can you tell us a little bit more about these two people and why we don't know more about them?
Oh, right. So they are actually fictional characters
Okay,
that they exist only in the story. So this
exactly.
story is like a riff on the A.S. Bayat, who is a
Author of Possession.
author possession, right? So this is a riff on possession, right? So I was like, you know what? I had read. I think I read written a draft of this when I saw the movie Possession. I had read it before, and then I saw the movie, and the movie which was, I
With
think,
Gwyneth Paltrow. Yeah.
Gwyneth Paltrow, yeah, and see Aaron Eckhart,
Yes.
yeah. And I said, you know what? That's a bad adaptation of a great book. Let me
Although I
let
enjoyed it,
Yeah, 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 that's true.
maybe because it's Gwyneth Paltrow, so I'm biased. Sorry, don't talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess it's less complex because the novel is complex because it has hundreds of pages, and you only
Hmm.
had like 1.5 hour of the movie to do the story justice, and they could not do it, of course. So this is like just a riff on Possession, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I really, because I so it was a riff on that, and then it was also a like a riff on, I don't know if you're familiar with the writer Manuel Argilia. He's
No.
he's a writer from the north. He's from the Ilocos.
Okay.
He was a very good writer. He has a staple short story in English literature class called "How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife." Uh, so so Manuel Argilia had written these great stories, and then World War I happened, World War II happened, and then he died during the
Mm-hmm.
war. So I just speculated, what if like this guy who had died had left a trove of stories, and then there was this person who was like in charge of it, and
Mm-hmm.
then the protagonist of the story are the researcher, or is the researcher trying to piece together this work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it started like as an exercise in class, like trying to figure things out. So yeah, so they're not real, but they are. I try to use like details from Argelia's life just
Mm-hmm.
to, and then like play around with it. And when it was initially published, there were just like 5 pages, but when so it had been published before in a journal, and it was 5 pages, but because we couldn't fit it in 5 pages here, it actually became 7 pages.
Okay. Oh boy. Yeah, I had my suspicion that wait, these people don't seem to be real because I have to admit I went on Google and saying, okay, are these people real?
Yeah,
When I couldn't
they're
find
not.
anything, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, I get it now.
yeah. Everything is like yeah. It's like basically the book is like a game that I'm playing with the reader, and
Well
yeah,
played. A
part of
well
the game
played
is that,
game.
yeah.
Author Dan Brown says that he usually hears the advice, write what you know. It's said all the time. A lot of writers, that's the advice that they give them. Write what you know. Anne Rice says that as well. But for him, Dan Brown says he writes what he doesn't know and what he wants to know. So is this something that you also agree with?
Yeah. I think that like write what you know is like very easy advice. Like write what you know. I know about how my life is, so I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
write about my life. But what you know is also, oh, I know romantic comedies. I'm gonna write a romance book, but I'm gonna base it on romantic comedies, the movies,
Mm-hmm.
without having read what a romance book is. And the same is true for someone who's going to say, I'm gonna write a fantasy novel and only watch Underworld and not read fantasy or urban fantasy novels.
Yeah,
Like,
and not read Tolkien or Martin or some
yeah,
or Terry
exactly.
Brooks.
Yeah. So
Diba?
yeah, so there is wisdom in writing what you know, but I also agree that you should write about what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
because that forces you to kind of look it up, discover it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of like the wonderful thing about writing is it's discovery. You're gonna discover things not only about yourself. Like for example, you write about a character that whose position is not your own. Like you write about like a character like in of a different gender from
Mm-hmm.
your own gender. Some people might say, okay, you don't get it, what you don't get what it's like to be a woman, since I can tell it in the story. But like just forcing yourself to write from that perspective forces you to try and empathize.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you like try and write about things that you don't know, you're going to just like open yourself to more opportunities to learn, right? And I mean, I know, I think Dan Brown, when Dan Brown said that, it's because he bases his novels on research. Like he
Yes.
is a heavy researcher. So I think it's great advice. Like if you just write about what you know, then you're just gonna repeat the same things over and over again. You're not gonna challenge yourself.
Okay. There was another quote that you used in the book. This time it's from Julio Cortazar.
Oh yeah.
It says, "So I have to write. One of us all has to write if this is going to get told." I so can relate to this quote because we writers mostly feel that way. That is, if you're a writer who writes, every day, if we fail to write for one day or clock in our on our manuscript for even just 500 words, we get a sense of fulfillment, and we feel that we have not wasted our day.
Yeah.
But do you get that when you write that? When you write or you fail to write, would you be more of a word count person, or 1 hour a day, regardless of the word count, is okay by you?
I think I mean depends on what you wanna really wanna do. Like
Mm-hmm.
for example, if you're writing a novel and you want the novel to be done by the end of the year, then you have to put like 1,000 words every day or 500 words every day, right? Uh, and I think just reaching the 500 words is going to be satisfactory. Knowing that in the process of revising it, maybe the 500 words you wrote that day will not survive the edit,
Yeah,
right? But if your goal is to just write every day, then a paragraph should is
is
fine.
okay.
It's
Right.
okay. Now for me, for example, because I'm mostly doing schoolwork right now, I'm not really doing any kind of writing that is for towards fiction, but
Mm-hmm.
because I'm writing for schoolwork for like requirements in graduate school, then I do have to have targets,
Mm-hmm.
and those are targets that I really either have to achieve, and if I don't achieve them, it feels bad. But I know that I have the next day to like fill those out. Yeah. So I think like just like fulfilling, and this is like going circling back to where we started, right, with validation.
Yeah.
Feeling fulfilled is like it's really an internal thing. If you're in it just to be able to write, or if you're in it to be able to tell a story and have people read it, then I think you any kind of target, any kind of output, any kind of wave you're getting your work out there, that's fine. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're like doing writing because you want to be a celebrity, uh, if you want to be an influencer, if
If
you're
you want to
writing,
be the next Jackie Collins,
yeah, then there's gonna be there is a steep climb, and there's no guarantee that you will get to the top or get what you want.
yeah,
Like even here, like we talk about, like in the Philippines, like publishing is right now is like you have a lot of options, especially self-publishing, right? But here in the US, like the market here is so big. There are a lot of writers, and every week there's like I know 10 books that come out, and of those 10 books that come out by the end of the year, that's like what 520 books.
it's so hard to catch up.
Yeah, it's so hard to catch up. So like getting published is a miracle, honestly. That's my thing. You publish a book by a major publisher, that or like then that's I think that's great.
Yeah, if you're buddy
Yeah,
buddies with Random House, yeah.
I don't even know how to get published at that level. So and
Traditionally, yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm not even. I mean, I don't know. I mean, eventually I want to try, but at this point I'm not. I just have to like focus on this one thing,
Yep.
and then maybe send out the second collection while I'm here.
All right. We
Yeah.
will we will be on the lookout for that.
Oh,
Um,
hopefully.
yeah. Any word of advice for aspiring or fellow creatives out there?
Oh, yeah. So I guess I would say is to like just do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, just like
Like,
Nike.
yeah, just like Nike, just do it. Kurt Vonnegut has this great quote that I will now paraphrase and botch royally, which is like, even if you sing badly, even if you write badly, even if I mean, if you do art and you do it badly, that's fine. I think the point is that you're doing it
Mm-hmm.
right. And all other validation towards like a creative practice is like personal levels. I think if you're writing fan fiction and your just goal is like to get likes in fanfiction.net, I don't know if fanfiction.net is still around, or AO3, then that's great. You're at that level and that's what you want. If you want to do your poetry on Instagram, or you want to do your jokes on Twitter, now X,
Mm-hmm.
or on threads, and have people like or haha on Facebook your jokes, if that's your creative practice, then that's great. I think that you just do what you want to do, and some there will be people who will validate you, uh, but you have to just do it.
Yeah, and give yourself that validation. You don't really have to wait for other people to give it to you. You give it to
True.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I take it that what's next on the horizon for you would hopefully be book number two,
Hopefully.
and of course finishing your studies and multitasking your duties as a creative director while you're there.
Oh no, I'm no longer.
I mean, oh,
I'm no longer doing that. I'm just a student right now, right here. But I'm not doing the
the
directorship.
director yet, or when you,
Uh,
or maybe when you get back. Yeah.
oh no,
Tama
I don't
naman.
want.
Too
Yeah, I
much
don't want to.
na.
I want to relax when I get home.
Okay. All right. For those who want to know more about you, what you do in your work, where can they follow you on social media?
Okay, I think, well, I'm not really in social media, but I do have a Threads account
Okay.
that is public. My username is not lowercase. I sometimes post about me watching Star Trek: Strange New Worlds,
There you
uh,
go.
or like things that I ate.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I'm thinking about doing a website, but it's still not there yet.
Yeah. The studies come first, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I take it from the numerous mentions that you have of Star Trek, you're more of a Trekkie than a Star Wars person.
You know what? You know what? Growing up, was a Star Wars person, but right now I'm more of a Trekkie.
Aha. Okay. All right. So that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much, Francis, for joining us
Thank you,
today
CJ.
on this episode, and thank you to Spine Books as well for your support since day one. Follow the show on Instagram and Facebook, and me over at cjedmonds.com. Remember to celebrate who you are and who you've come to be. Everyone's journey is different, so don't judge until you've walked in their shoes. Till the next episode in the Authors Unite. Keep creating, and we will keep reading. Stay safe, stay creative, and namaste. Blessed be. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on this episode. Next week, we have comic book writer and artist Roy Mercado as our guest. And if you're a fan, you know you need to tune in. Now, and if tuning in weekly to the show has been part of your lifestyle, we thank you so much for that. Now, speaking of lifestyle, the Mega Brands and Lifestyle Sale returns this week, Friday to Sunday. That is September 15 to 17 at the Mega Trade Hall number 3 of SM Mega Mall. Now, the event, which started last 2010, is one of the longest running brand and lifestyle sales in the metro and is visited for about 20,000 to 30,000 shoppers every time. Admission is free. And it's just in time for payday weekend. But not only that, it is also just in time for those who have already begun or just about to start their holiday shopping as early as now. So go visit the Mega Brands and Lifestyle Sale September 15 to 17 this week at the Mega Trade Hall number 3 of SM Mega Mall. Now, if you are a creative and you would like to be featured on the podcast, simply just email us. That's urbanfantasyph@gmail.com. All of our past episodes are ready for you to return to or listen chronologically if you're listening to us for the very first time. Follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and now Threads. Thank you for today, and we'll see you again next time. That was another episode of Urban Fantasy PH. Join us next time as we feature another creative soul who wants their art to be seen, heard, and shared. If you have your own work to share, just email us at urbanfantasyph@gmail.com. Till the next episode, this is independent author, singer-songwriter, radio personality, voice actor, and fellow creative, CJ Edmunds, reminding you to always listen to your heart, create with your mind, and share with your soul. Goodbye, everybody. Namaste. Blessed be.